All right. So we call the meeting to order, and the first item is public comments. Anybody else? No? Okay. Here I am back again. Now, just wanted to talk to you about some of the stuff I have found out while I poke around. I'm a poker. As you know, I am a park examiner, and I do that. So here's something I found out that causes me great concern. And just so you know, my history with affordable housing goes way back. You remember rep, obviously. And of course, you know, we had Ellen Hoy and all of them. And I participated by writing one of the very first grants for what is it called? It's called self-help. So just FYI, you know, I'm not an ignorant person about the community nor the efforts. And at one point, we had, when I was doing some economic development, we had Harry Frampton. If you don't know about Harry Frampton is, he is the head of East West. He is the fellow who did, he did, you know, much of the housing that's gone on and over the in Denver. He is a very, very respected person. And Terry Mayer, who was the town manager for Vail and many of the other corridor towns, they came up here, this is about 20 years ago. And we had them speak in the city hall. And somebody asked, so they just sat in some chairs and talked. And someone asked them, is there anything they regret? And they both said, we didn't build enough. So people took that and did nothing with it, which is kind of what we do. You know, nobody really picks it up. Thank God for you guys and getting the no levy and doing what you've done. And special kudos to you, Jason. Anyway, I have, you know, I have some concerns as I went around. And what the concerns are, there's a lot of groups of people, other than the angry ones that appear, the one that sinks around with the vote. There are others. They're more subtle. They sit on boards. You don't know who they are. So they want to take you out. That's what I want. So it's like people want to see you go away because you are doing what they don't want, which is affordable housing. And that group can be any number of people in the community. Those that are racist, those that stand for a profit, anyone. So you guys, are, in my thing, are endangered. So this is the premise of which I speak. So I know you have how many pick 3 or 2 people to negotiate with the city and with the county. And I am going to propose something that might offend some and not others, who knows. And my proposal is that you all need, I would think, some new cases. And it's about the art of war. Have you ever read it? Don't know. Yes, you know, that this is just my own logic. And it's like the group that perhaps pull strings and do things are prepared for those of you who have always feared faith. You know, and Kathy, no offense to you, but you've negotiated many, many things. And people know, any of you who have negotiated in the past in this group, they know your pluses and your minuses. So I would recommend that you put 2 very different people. And I would also recommend, I was here last time, and Scott, wherever you are, you really spoke well and strongly. And I don't know if you've ever been involved in some of this politics wrong. But I think there's some benefit if you put 2 very different people in there because it's the artist of us. And I go through the city in the city. But the thing of it is you catch them a little bit off and put them on the back foot because they don't know how you will negotiate. They don't know you that well. Now maybe they do, maybe they don't. But that is primarily my biggest thought is to use something that helps you not be dead. What means elephant words here. So that's why I'm here. It is primarily to say, I don't want to see you die at all. I don't want to see you impaired at all. You need to do the work. The other big thing for me is you have been given a gift of all of that land. Every friggin' square inch. You don't give any of it away unless it benefits you. this group. And it's like, you really do need to stand up on this one, because you're liable to be rolled over. And that's part of my biggest concern. I have another reason for you to stay, and that is, I won't be able to continue to be doing this. But I do want to create senior affordable housing. When I talked about for years. And the most appropriate agency for us to talk under might be you guys. But I want to see you alive so that you can help us out, us older people that are here, you becoming infirm. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Noreen. And you're never going to be in.
Any other public comment? Seeing none, we'll move to board member comments. Is there any board member comments?
Yeah,
Yes.
actually, there's just a couple items. You should have received a copy of discussion topics for future board of director meetings. If you haven't, please let me know. And the idea is to review those, identify any new ones that you'd like to add, change some of the ones that are there, and establish priorities for each. And then you send that to Kathy and yourself. There's a lot of work to be done between now and the next couple of months. And one of the comments has been, we did Ross having a meeting every couple of weeks, twice a month, versus 3.5 hours. I don't know how you all feel about it. Are you willing to consider having multiple meetings in a month? Or do you want to stick with one meeting per month the way it's set up right now? The question. That's a question. So you can give it some thought and let your feelings be known to Kat.
Lou, are you planning on discussing this with board, future agenda topics today?
Not today.
What are we looking on for our main meeting? What do we tentatively have scheduled as an agenda item for our main meeting? Because I mean, for the question of whether we need to meet twice a month, I guess my
You
question.
should have a list of
Okay.
future board meetings.
Yeah, but I so you don't have any. Not
Yeah,
back.
they're actually the next 4 board meetings laid out in rough form.
All right, and it's in a separate email, okay.
You should have gotten a copy of the politically correct team meeting minutes. Hopefully you've had a time to review those,
Okay.
since we'll have a discussion about representation on that today. And I'm going to throw this out. At some point, I'd like us to have a lessons learned on Brown Ranch and also our property management strategy. What did we learn from both those experiences? Because to my knowledge, we haven't really had lessons learned what happened with Brown Ranch. And I think that's a good exercise to go through. So I just throw that. I will put it on as one of the topics.
Is one of those meetings reflection on we have the board retreat and we brought them all the subjects? Is that a topic? One of these.
There were a bunch of subjects that a retreat had, but you should have received a sector document that laid out more discussion topics. And they should include the stuff we're talking about.
Are you going to review that?
You should not.
No, are you going to review a person in the board?
Yes, we can do that.
That's important. One way for that to be a retreat.
Oh, I understand.
Yes, Steve.
I just want to say that I think instead of talking about having more board meetings, longer board meetings, I think our focus needs to be having effective board
Yes.
and focus on priorities and moving it down. And I think that if you, in my view, the selection committee or whatever for UED is a top priority item, that's not a whole board item. That's a specific committee underneath the board. I think that working on the board retreat In terms of the survey results and how we're going to put this board into a more effective high-performing board. It's the second high priority item, and both of those, that one it could also be worked on separately by a group, but not necessarily. But the first one certainly, and the third one of selecting people to be on the Brown Ranch / Slate Creek neighborhood project is something we should just get done today, and we're done with that. But to me, those other two things are tremendously high priority items that go outside our normal business. Although I think the board functioning, the board effectiveness piece is an ongoing piece. It's not something we just check off the top. But we have a lot of work to do on that. So I'm more into effectiveness and how we set this up versus having longer meetings and not making decisions or kicking things down.
What was your first one?
The executive directors.
Yeah, we'll talk about the transition plan and the executive director today. On June, whatever the next meeting is. You said May? May 14th, we'll talk about the results of the survey and prioritization of the action items from that. And I'll get information to people.
That's just in the vein of trying to make things more effective. Not necessarily everything has to be a meeting, but we are getting a lot of documents sent to us on a weekly basis. They are rather lengthy, but asking for, rather than just saying, let us know if you have thoughts. What is the specific action that is requested from document review? Maybe make it date bound, beyond just feedback, and maybe preview how that feedback is going to be used to inform future agenda. So that we just heard from a couple of people that we've received a list of what will be done with this list. What the specific from that list was maybe a little unclear. Just by I like that you sent the list around, but maybe further facilitating synthesis of doing the call.
I mean, the idea is to ascertain priorities, and if we miss any.
Right. But I just think like being more strict. Don't ever give people as much credit as they deserve. Just be really specific.
Okay.
No, I appreciate what Michael Ann saying, because I really think it's a good idea for us to do like the city council and county commissioners does, and at our board meeting, talk as a board what we want on next month's meeting. So I appreciate the list also, but I didn't know if it was like just random ideas that we're gonna talk about now, or whether you wanted us to say, this is what I want in May, July. So I do think if the board has a consensus of what we're gonna talk about in future meetings, we'll be more effective.
Okay, in the document you received, you would have through June board meetings, and those are suggested documents. So if there are comments, that would be great. If we want to have a detailed discussion about them, we can do that. Or I'll send more clarifying notes. One of the comments that has also been made, and I think Michael talked about it, is getting out homework assignments. And the expectation is that people complete them. And so we're going to try something like that. Let's see how that works out.
Any other board comments?
I just wanted to announce that I will be speaking early, but I intend to join the rest on Zoom.
And I should mention that to facilitate Michael Ann's participation, we're gonna move, if it's all right with the board, move items, discussion items of the financial.
We're just gonna swap since the
Swap.
financial.
Want to explain what?
I just requested that since there was a 30-minute agenda item at the very end, we just slot that in front of the 60-minute agenda item, which would allow them to stay. Figure out special.
Does anyone have an objection to that? Thank you very much. And we will move. Is there any other board comment? Then we'll move to staff comments. You'll notice that we don't have a staff report. And we are trying to send out as much information as possible to inform the board and not just wait for board. So you'll be getting weekly reports, and I'm gonna turn it over to Elliot.
Yep. Good afternoon, everyone. Just a few updates for you. Just like to thank Robin Shepherd. She's kind of stepping away now, tailing off with her hours. We've got Lorraine Martin starting as our new communications manager. And so
Coming for you.
I don't know.
And so she's been with us for about a week and a half now. And has been, getting up to speed, meeting with all the staff, and seems to be settling in really well. But yeah, just again, thanks for Robin for stepping in these last few months and helping us out with communication stuff. I sent out an email yesterday kind of documenting a transition plan and some deliverables that we as staff are working on with Jason. Just to that point, I kind of explained a little bit of this in my email, but it essentially kind of sat down with the leadership team, kind of talked to them about kind of what we need or kind of have a better understanding of as it relates to development, entitlements, various things there where Jason really has an expertise in that. We're meeting weekly as a leadership team. So that's Alyssa, myself, Emily, Sandy, and Lorraine, and just talking through that. And, you'll see in there, Jason's been sitting down, meeting with staff, talking about documenting the entitlements process as an example. And so just want to let the board know that that's in motion. There's been good kind of feedback and input from everyone during this process. And I think everything's in a really good spot. So I'll continue to update that document and just make sure we're moving towards a good transition here. Jason leaving us in June. So I want to let you know also, it looks like we are really close to getting the PSA executed. So that will be based on the conversation yesterday happening on Monday. And it's been reviewed internally with George and our team, and it's kind of met all the criteria for the motion back at the March 2nd meeting that the board laid out for that PSA. So we're getting closer, and I think we'll be in a position kind of Monday afternoon to get that signed and executed and moving forward. So, just a quick update on that for the board. And then lastly, I'd like to turn it over to La, give a kind of brief sales update and where things are at with Cottonwoods and our pace of sales, so to speak.
Yeah, hi everybody. Just want to give you a quick update now that we have run all 4 lotteries for building 2 at the Cottonwoods. Yesterday was our first open house. Elliot was able to get keys on Tuesday. We had 49 people that came through in a matter of 2 hours. They were able to select their final units if they won multiple units. So it was really exciting for most of the 100 and 120s hadn't seen their actual unit yet. So to be able to say welcome home, there were lots of happy tears, lots of excitement. It was really heartwarming to see. As of today, we have 30 units that are spoken for. 19 of those are under contract. We have 6 people that are still deciding between 2 units. So they're supposed to give us their answer by the end of day today. So hopefully we'll send them all those due diligence documents, and those under contract number will increase by middle of next week. We do have 4 orphaned units in the 140 category and 1 in the 130 category. So we will work to regenerate that lottery next week to try and get those units spoken for. We also launched the dates for Building 1's lottery. So the 100% AMI opens next week. That's 13 units. As of today, I have 42 households interested in those 13 units. I have 14 households for the 5 120% units. 4 for the 3 130% units, and we're still kind of working through the 140s from today, so I'm not sure who's gonna maintain in building 2 versus potentially move to building 1, so I'll try and get more of that information, just around that. I thought it was interesting, we did have 4 households that only entered for the IRE, which was that penthouse unit. They did not apply for any other unit, so they are moving solely to, building 1 for that component. The other piece on the real estate, just for a future board meeting that may come up, as you know, we received $500,000 of Prop 123 funds. Now that we have households that are under contract, we're starting to see some sticking points within utilizing that funds. The largest one is the front end ratio. It's a state statute is 35%. Catherine's been made aware of this and have already brought it up the chain as they are working through some of these pieces to hopefully make that adjustment. But because they don't meet that 35%, they've been pushed into the YVHA, our county-wide guidelines, as we don't have a front-end ratio component. So of the $200,000 that was allocated in our budget, $120,000 of it's now spoken for, so I'm afraid we may exhaust those funds. Therefore, in May or June, I may be coming back with a supplemental budget to decide if you would like to replenish that pot if we exhaust it. And that's,
Clarification,
yes.
you indicated a number on 140% AMI folks. Were there 4 units still available, or we only sold?
We have 4 units that are now available because we had one gentleman who actually won 6 units. And then the second person also won 5 units. So those were the only 2 people that had gone for those units. Therefore, I didn't have anyone to go for after, hence why they're orphaned.
Okay, so yeah, only have 4 offerings.
So far, 4 in the 140, correct, and they're all 1 bedrooms. And then
Okay.
I have 1 2-bedroom in the 130.
That's actually better.
Yeah, and then we'll see what happens when people select the rest of the 145 the end of this. Yeah, that.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes. Of the 140 units, can you, if you have this data, what is the breakdown between people who went up? Like 100 or 120 or 30 AMI into the 140, and who was truly 140?
Let's see. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. Roughly looking at, I've got 4 that moved up from a 120 or 130 to that piece that I know of.
And you had, and then the rest that entered the 140 were true 140%.
Yes. 140.
And how many are, what was the total?
So in the initial 140 lottery, we had 17 households.
Hey, first I want to thank Michael and the real estate team, you guys, and Araceli and everyone, you guys are crushing it. And the development team, these units are so nuts. I mean, they're great. How many, refresh my memory, how many ADA units in the building 1 or the next round of lotteries? There's 1 per building. And is that what AMI level? You know, all that? You get back to me if you want to on that. So, I just am trying to, I mean, so with the AMIs, the way I understand it is that it's just part of the natural lottery. It's not just for someone who needs the ADA rather. So, and then the other thing, I just heard that one of the people that went to the open house brought a recording of barking dogs and music and like parties and stuff and put it in like the unit next door.
Yeah.
And you couldn't hear a thing. So,
Yeah, I was actually with the gentleman and, he made a playlist of barking dogs and crying babies. And, we went into the units, Jake on the other side of his, and his girlfriend played the recordings and you couldn't hear anything. Now music, you could hear slightly a low bass sound, but, yeah, the noise and the sound transference, in that building is really spectacular. I mean, I think that's going to be an underrated selling point, for living in the Cottonwoods that people will be very happy.
And we had people that really wanted underground, but they got a carport, but they're so thrilled with who their neighbors are in the community that they're like, we're staying in building 2. This is where we want to be. So.
well, I just want to say, because I mean, I know you've heard a lot about the cost overruns and everything, but the quality of these units, I mean, if that's where the extra cost went to, I say well done. Because as you know, I was talking to Ken Marsh, and these are units we can be proud of. And the important thing is that they're good homes for our residents. And just as an additional just note, Elliot, I know you're so busy right now, but I actually do personally just like the written staff reports because then they're part of our board packet and the community can see them. So I don't know if that's time could this is my thought. I don't know what the rest of the board thinks. I mean, I love the verbal reports, but if it's an online packet, then community members have better transparency for it. If that ties into what the current capacity is. Just my thoughts.
And then my last comment is now that we do have keys, I know that all board members, city council members and county commissioners weren't able to make the open house. If it's something you're interested in, please reach out to me and I'm happy at any time to accommodate your schedule, get you over there and show you some of the floor plans.
Probably should have said this during board comment, but thank you guys for the tour last week. It was excellent. If you guys haven't seen units, I encourage you to reach out and go tour them. The units were beautiful. There were 2 homeowners there who had won the lottery, who were just so excited. It was really wonderful to get to tour all the units, to get to see, like, you could step on the deck and you could get great views. Obviously, you could hear noises and you come inside the deck. It's quiet. I just think that everything was so well done, and I think it's something you all should be proud of. So thank you. If you haven't checked the location.
What's really impressive is you think of multifamily as boxes where people put it in shut away, narrow hallways. That's the view the community has of those. When you want to sell multifamily, what we're doing, go take a look at that. It'll blow you away. It doesn't feel like multifamily.
Always were
It feels like a community. It really does. And well.
And so the units just feel so much bigger than the square footage with the high ceilings, the windows, and
Hallways.
This is wonderful.
Yeah, it was really great to be a part of that yesterday, and everyone that was there was just really stoked and excited. I mean, you could just sense it. Talking to people, it was a really good event. And, yeah, it's a great project. A lot to be proud of.
All right, any other questions of Elliot or Alyssa?
Thank you.
All right, then we will move to our next agenda item, which is the second supplemental budget amendment in 2026-0066. Who would like to? Is Sandy on the line or?
Yeah, I'm not sure if Sandy is going to speak to this, but I can jump in.
I was gonna say, Steve negotiated this with the county.
I have the notes on.
You haven't? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so we received a $1 million grant from Brown County for technical work and services out at Brown Ranch. And we had spent about $283,000 of that grant. There was kind of a time period there between the annexation and just recently where just kind of an administrative thing. This grant was kind of overlooked, or the reporting on it had been overlooked. And so we had the county manager, Jay Harrington, reach out with Emily on this. And basically there was a hearing last month with the Brown County commissioners, and we have spent $283,000 of this $1 million grant. And so we're being asked to return $216,000 to the county, which will leave $500,000 of this grant money that can be utilized for technical work at Brown Ranch. This money can be utilized, I guess, as we get further into it, with the Slate Creek neighborhood, or potentially with just YVHA engaging various consultants to do that work for us. So this resolution essentially just kind of formalizes, it's a supplemental budget, giving back the $216,000 to Brown County and leaving the Housing Authority with $500,000 to work on all things Brown Ranch.
Any questions on this? If not,
I have a lot of questions, Kathy. And first, thank you, county commissioners, for your support on this. Elliot, I don't see Sandy on. Do we need to have a poll on this answer? We need to have this like in a, soft reserve fund, since it can only be used for specific items listed?
Soft reserve.
I mean, does it need to be, like, would this need to be specified as reserve?
I don't,
Because it can't be used for operations, it needs to be used specifically for the items. I thought they were penciled out and that.
I am here and we are
Yes.
reserving those funds. Catherine, thank you.
They are
Yeah,
reserved.
The auditor knows about it and they will be reserved, put aside as restricted at the end of every year.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Sandy.
I'll just make a note too that the funds have to be spent by March 1st, 2028, or they are also returned. Any unused funds will be returned to the county. Unless there's an extension or whatever reason. But that's a future commissioner's problem. I'm just kidding.
Hopefully your problem too.
thank you. Any other questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve 2026-006.
Motion approved.
Second.
second,
I have a motion by Lou and a second by Cole. Any further discussion on the motion? If not, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries unanimously. All right, our next action item is a discussion and resolution appointing Elliot Lawrence as the Yampa Valley Housing Authority Acting Executive Director. Elliot, I'm gonna ask, well, I will go ahead and ask the board if there are any questions about or any concerns about having Elliot act as the interim director.
I have no concern, but I do have a question.
Yes.
There's no salary specified in the packet, so it doesn't say how much we will be paying.
That was my question too.
Elliot and I have had a conversation and his preference, and this is subject to the board, is to continue at his existing salary, and depending on how long he serves, he would like a consideration of a bonus without we haven't discussed the amount. I mean, it would really depend on how long he's in that position. It doesn't make, he felt that it didn't make sense to have a raise and then drop back.
so differential pay, once it's known the timeline,
Yes.
I wouldn't call it bonus.
I want to call it bonus item.
Yeah, differential,
Yeah, I would, thank you. Just trying to find the words, I think.
I think that actually has tax implications too, so
Yes,
stop saying bonus.
yeah. And also, I don't bonuses for government or agencies. Did you guys talk to our HR person about this, Sandy, and what are her thoughts?
No.
No.
I haven't had a conversation.
Okay, I really would like to encourage as a process focus that we've got great staff and a lot of skill levels. We have a human resource director. When we're having personnel discussions, we need to get input from our HR director. So I don't know, and I don't want to put Sandy on the hot seat right now, but I do think this needs to be a standard process we uphold.
Would you accept a suggestion that the salary discussion be separate and come back to the board at the next meeting?
I think that, no, I think these are big.
I think we need to decide now. I guess we can ask Sandy, does the differential payment sound reasonable to you, or do you have any comments on this?
This is the first I've heard about it, Catherine. I'm sure we can work it out, but I need to do some research.
I think an important question to ask. We know it's going to take probably 2 or through October to find a new executive director. You know, that's pretty much the rough timeline. So the question is, are you comfortable doing that for how many of those months? Do you want to put a time limit on, say for 2 months or 3 months, we can do the differential payment?
No, I mean, I expressed to Kathy, I'm happy to step into this role with what my current salary is. And I'm, you know, I'm happy to lead the organization, with, and, you know, not considering any sort of like salary increase or anything like that. So, whatever that time period is, I'm committed to act as this, interim executive director.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we frame the time frame. That's such a long time.
And I'm just saying that I think we definitely have to pay Elliot for his extra work on this. And whether we want it or not, I mean, what we don't have to do right now is ask the salary increase, but the differential payment has to be appropriate and fair and needs to be defined, because he's gonna be doing an awful lot and needs to be compensated.
Yeah, I agree. I don't want to negotiate right now. but
Right.
That doesn't, I think this is an HR definitely discussion on this. So it's going to be very hard to make a decision today when we don't understand even the tax implications of differential pay versus pay increase. And all that. But if we assume that it might take up to 6 months, I think we need to hear a recommendation from HR on this.
I agree with that.
I agree.
We have to move forward with the Elliott, or my personal opinion is that we need to move forward with appointing an interim director today. But I do think as a board practice, we need to come with financials to these moving forward. We need to have talked to HR before this stuff is on the agenda, would be my recommendation, but your other question was, do we have any questions and do we want to appoint Elliot? I would love to appoint Elliot if there's no more questions, but I'll see about the response.
And I will say he's the acting, not really interim, it's more semantics, but he's acting executive director, so.
So is that a motion?
If there are no more questions, I'm happy to move to appoint Elliot Lawrence as the acting executive director of YVHA.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Angelica and a second by Mark. Any further discussion on the motion?
I just like to have a friendly that this is going to HR to discuss differential pay structure.
Yes. Any other questions or comments? If not, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously. All right. Yes.
Yeah, so thank you guys for that. I just wanted to say and have it on the record that, you know, me stepping into this role is really to support the staff, to support the organization. I am not in, I don't view this as like a time to change what we're doing and time to like, add a lot of uncertainty to what we're working on as an organization, projects and things like that. So I just wanted to say that, you know, I'm here to support the team and support the wishes of the board. And that's my primary goal in stepping into this role. And then also once a new executive director is found, supporting them and making sure there's a solid transition and that person, whoever it is being set up for success. So anyway, I just wanted to say that.
Elliot, I do have one question for you. It's really based on going through this situation where we were searching for a new city manager. And during that process, you will be stepping up and taking on new responsibilities. And so how do you see for up to maybe a 6-month period of time doing both jobs? Or do you see a way of delegating something so that this isn't a total burnout situation?
Yeah, there will be delegation of responsibilities and duties. You know, I think our experience from last summer with Jason kind of being out has, you know, I felt like the team really kind of rallied around and we did a great job of kind of taking different things off people's plates and making sure things were moving forward. So I do have some experience with this. I mean, there are things, I mean, for example, like Brown Ranch, I know Emily's more of the subject matter expert on that, from a staff perspective, so she's taking the lead with all things Slate Creek neighborhood, Brown Ranch. But yes, there will be delegation, and I think the communication and kind of where we are as staff is in a good spot, and making sure that, you know, we're checking each other, things. So.
Make sure you communicate.
Absolutely.
This becomes overload.
Yeah, I will.
And I just want to say thank you, Elliot. We're lucky to have you.
Next action item is a review and approval of the administrative and services agreement for the pilot purchase of deed restriction programs with the city of Steamboat Springs. And we have Brad with the city with us. Brad, are you going to take us through the?
Yeah, some combinations of Brad Calvert, City of Steamboat Springs. I've got some colleagues here, Gates Gooding, who's been helping with this, and also Kaylee McCarthy, who's the Housing Innovation Specialist for the City of Steamboat Springs. We put a couple of slides together related to the pilot program. I can share them with you, but you also have a staff memo in your packet, as well as essentially the administrative and services agreement that's in front of you, and a scope of services related to that. So whatever's the pleasure of the board, I can walk through a couple slides just to orient you before your discussion, if that's helpful. Okay, cool. Let me share here.
Is that different than the ones Alyssa sent out?
No, I hope not. You don't.
I didn't make any changes. Like, there were several. Just curious, several projects.
One second. And yeah, there's some that are resource slides. So I'm only going to cover like the first 6. We'll catch up eventually. Here. So again, Brad Calvert, done with the City of Steamboat Springs and the planning department. Just a little bit of background. So this is a pilot purchase of deed restriction program. The one thing that's not in this presentation that I thought I would mention is in our conversation with council, there's kind of 3 ways that someone can activate this program. One is like at time of a sales transaction. There is a market rate home for sale. Through that purchase process, city subsidy comes in at closing. That buyer is now buying a deed restricted unit, whether that be a price cap deed restriction or a local employment deed restriction. But there are other ways that this can work that are also contemplated, and that's that an employer can actually purchase the units with the sort of expectation that they would lease those units to an employee. That's why they would do that. And the third option is essentially no sales transaction. An existing resident could come in and receive subsidy to place that restriction on their home and not actually vacate the unit. And the conversation with council, those last 2 options that were talked about were like, it does seem like good options. Let's do them 4 or 5 months into the pilot. Let's really focus on those sort of main sales transactions on the front end. If we expend entire appropriation just doing that, fine by us, but we'll think about that should the program continue more permanently. So I wanted to mention that because we didn't really cover that in the presentation. So I kind of covered some of these already, and I know they're in your memo as well. There are really kind of 2 types of restriction: resident occupied and price capped restrictions. And each of these have been adopted by City Council. There are essentially policy guidelines related to the program that have been adopted by City Council. City Council has adopted a $3 million appropriation to support the pilot program, really obviously for 2026. They did not formally adopt an appropriation related to the housing authority's proposed role in administering the program, or being the primary program administrator, but it was sort of assumed in the $3 million. The general sort of terms that we ended up financially was sort of an $85,000 or so not to exceed fee for the housing authority to be the primary program administrator for the program.
Brad, I have a question. Do you want me to ask questions at the end? Or
Whatever you want. We're good.
How can you just explain how that 85,000 was calculated, and then when will it be paid and how will it be paid? And then, what does the do not, like, not to exceed? Like, are we going to get 85,000? Or are we going to get somewhere between 0 and 85,000?
How many, do you want to work through the order?
Sorry, that was more than one
The
question.
how was essentially leaning into the existing understanding from the housing authority staff, primarily, as to what it takes to actually work through an entire transaction. So there's a general understanding of like hourly, 6, 10, 12 hours per transaction, generally estimating the number of transactions. I'll give you, for example, I think it was Breckenridge had essentially the same appropriation and ended up putting restrictions on 21, 22 units. That's probably the flow that we will see with $3 million. I do not anticipate a $0 option as anywhere as being on the table because the way the scope is written, there is sort of an upfront set up to do a lot of activities that will take, quite a few hours to make sure that this interfaces well with how you all handle similar programs already. And then to your point, Commissioner Salinas, like it will be transaction by transaction, count the hours, pay the time, that sort of thing.
So then if, thank you, that's
Yep.
super helpful. If we get to the point where the city has paid the 85,000 and you want YVHA to do more work, like there's more transactions, we just stop doing the work.
The view here is that through a pilot program that is 1 year, is that we will not see multiple transactions on an individual unit. The goal here is that it should cover the first set of, let's call it 20 to 25 transactions. And then there is a subsequent conversation of, let's assume typical churn. I think 6, 7 years probably per unit. That's a longer term conversation.
Thank you.
Yep.
So those are my questions too. Thank you, Angelica. So basically, you're gonna pay an upfront amount to set up the program and then an amount for each transaction.
Correct.
Have those dollar amounts been determined, like how much is upfront cost, or is that still TBD?
So I've reached out to get exact numbers. The initial upfront cost is probably the bulk of it.
Okay.
One of the components that we had discussed was running all of these through New Communities Law, which is our fair housing attorney. That's a heavy portion to review 2 deed restrictions and then whatever amendments we make to the deed restriction implementation plan or whichever city housing guidelines we decide to utilize for the program. So that's the initial piece, and then the software piece. Then you've got the initial sales and then the ongoing compliance that we would annually get the deed restriction lines out.
Okay, so we're still working on.
Yeah, I've asked for those numbers at the time.
The idea is we're reimbursing for direct costs. Yep.
And I should have prefaced that by saying how much I love this idea. I think that every time the city and the housing authority can partner, it makes a gazillion% sense. So if there's any responsibilities, Steve, Dave, that, Katie and Gates, that, the housing authority can't start partnering with the city on, that doesn't make sense for us each to be building up, staff when we can be helping. So I really appreciate your partnership on this, guys.
Okay, good.
I think I sent you an email about this, but the 3% cap starts at the price of the house that's bought down, not the market rate. Is that correct?
Correct. And there's
It's starting at a different point, which is important.
yes.
Good thing.
And the restriction, I think, I don't remember the tag, it's purchase price, but there's a way to get there, but yes, that's correct, yeah. Just quick, keep
Other
going.
questions? I saw a hand.
Oh, sorry.
Is this the first time that housing authority has seen this? I mean, this is the first time I've seen it. But this is the first time housing authority has seen it as well.
The board, correct.
John, I think it looks like a great program, but there's a lot of work to do here. There's, his staff ready to do this, or are we ready to take this on?
I would say yes, based on conversations we've had internally. We do have capacity with Alyssa and Araceli and their expertise. And we've been having these conversations for several months now about this.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
internally, we have the staff, yeah, and feel comfortable with kind of things.
Okay.
I think it's important to note that this program is something that the Housing Authority kind of is already doing. We manage over 100 deed restrictions, so there's just one or two additional components that are being added into what we're already generally.
Yeah, and that's, the primary reason like this arrangement got to where it is it's a logical extension of services already provided by the Housing Authority and service to the community. So this is us tapping into the local expertise that we have in our community.
Then this is based out of the Housing Authority is going to be not in essence, so literally a subcontractor. And the city is, so two comments. One, the city is requiring general liability insurance as well as professional liability. That is not always easily attainable. Will our insurance underwriter provide that? Do we know?
I think from the initial review, everything that we saw from the documents provided is in alignment with what CERS already provides the Housing Authority. I didn't see anything that stood out as flagging as too different.
On the insurance piece, there was some uncertainty as to whether the city's typical insurance requirements apply to YVHA because it's two governmental entities.
Right.
And so, legal is willing to take another look at that.
Well, that's, I would just look at that because that's providing professional liability insurance, having the Housing Authority insure city, in essence, for actions of the Housing Authority is would be a pretty big step. So if you could look at that, maybe modify that, that would be good. And the last comment was, this document says over and over and over that all the records must be kept separate. And confidential, the confidentiality part's obvious, but separate records. So this, again, you're a subcontractor, so this should be set up whenever you start doing it, and concentrate on keeping a separate set of records. And that is, I mean, I'm used to doing it. Well, really difficult, especially when you got 8 people working. So spend some time figuring out how to do that and how to keep it truly good.
Any other questions or?
Yeah, I just, one question, Elliot, do you have separate tracking numbers? That people charge their time to specifically, like for this assignment, you have 0001 ... something. Is that a good idea to have so that we can keep track of how much is actually spent? I mean, just give it thought.
Looking to Alyssa for.
We can. The numbers that we provided to Brad were based on what our general deed restriction transaction time takes, the back and forth with the client, the extra components. We were a little conservative on it because the new piece is us working with the city finance department and overseeing that financial component. But they've all been pretty in alignment, but we can try that if that's.
Well, I mean, data is important.
Yeah.
Knowing how much it takes to do something is awesome.
Yeah, I think what Lou's saying is just like kind of, because it's a new program, best practice would be to track our hours and see how that aligns with what we're charging. And then as we move forward with the program, if it's renewed or continues, that gives us a basis to potentially negotiate or justify if we need a higher number in the future.
Yeah.
And I think also one benefit of this is it's a pilot. I'm sorry, I mean, it's just a pilot program. Hopefully this will be an opportunity we can set up the best practices for future partnerships with the city. So, and then also one other question I had, I'm guessing, did George review this document?
He has not yet, so we received the draft copy, provided our initial comments as city legal was finalizing. So all of that needs to be, it's in the process, I believe, of being merged. And then once we have that piece.
Give it to George.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions of Brad?
And I did have one other question. Who is going to be doing, I didn't see advertising or marketing or messaging in here. Is that part of the 85,000 that we need to message it, or is the city gonna do that, or how are we gonna get the word out to the community?
Please, as the board, I'll jump to the next steps.
Sorry.
No, you're good. No, you all were jumping right in, so we might as well sort of talk what's next. So obviously you have on in front of you today that administration services agreement. And to Lala's point, like, we will finalize. I mean, there's you'll even see some highlights in there that are still some questions that feel relatively minor to sort out. Then we need to actually create the administrative procedures. That's the sort of key piece here. Is obviously to develop administratively. And then Catherine, to your point, program promotion, I think is joint. I mean, a lot of it would fall on city comms team. What I have tended to say is people want to jump to promotion right away, but I want to have the administrative procedures nailed down. Like the very easy use case that I use is I do not want to promote this until I know what phone number someone calls, what email they use to find out more about the program. So like that's the type of like detail that gets worked out in the administrative procedures. And that way we know exactly what the air quotes front door to the program looks like. I think we probably could guess that right now, but that's the type of thing that gets worked out. And that I will say, I feel like word of mouth is going to be a really big component of this. I'm just hearing it over and over and over again from people. As soon as they hear about this, they're like, you tell me the second this is available, whether it's me, my friends, my neighbors, my family, there are folks that this feels like the exact right program for. Those tend to be folks who likely could enter home ownership in a standard housing market, but cannot enter home ownership into this market. They can handle the monthly note. It is just the sizable down payment that they can't handle. And this is essentially acts like a jumbo down payment assistance program. And so we really think we will get to sort of 20 to 25 transactions relatively quickly through, standard, like we've already sort of had conversations with realtors and the lending community, just kind of, again, word of mouth stuff. We will be more in sort of promotional blast mode as soon as we know exactly how to, again, onboard people into the program.
And actually, my really question was whether like we're responsible in using part of that 85,000 to pay for promoting. So you're right. I think people want to do it, but I think we need to make sure that when we start the messaging and promotional, that's very applicable to the community. Because I mean, word of mouth sounds great, but it can be like, I don't want just people to be in the know to use this program. We need to blast it out, and whether it's a lottery system or whatever, make sure it's very fair and equitable to everyone.
Right. And I view those promotional expenses as incurred by the city. Now, where, what I would want to tap into with Lala and Araceli sort of expertise on how to best promote, what language helps people understand the opportunity, but also the obligation, like whatever you all obviously have a depth of experience in making sure potential program participants understand what they're signing up for. That's the type of thing that we would want to sort of partner with the housing.
Yeah, and also,
but a Facebook ad buy or whatever, that's a cost we incur.
But I was also thinking, how we prioritize, because it's not like the traditional lottery for a unit. Like what is it, first come, first serve, or how do we make sure this is very fair?
This is first come, first serve,
Okay.
Which and in part, that was the other, just when you mentioned this, that's why I went ahead and went to this slide. That's part of the program evaluation. Like we want, the way that Gates and Kaylee and I have talked about this is, we believe there is a market for this product. We are going into a pilot phase to test the market, to see if the market will absorb this product and at what is the rate of absorption. And then we were asked ourselves going forward, what does a multi-year version of this program look like? And that the pilot program may say, we want to go to something that feels more like a lottery model rather than a first come, first serve, but we'll have to have this experience, learn from it, and then we calibrate.
We already had 2 people contact us after the newspaper article, so the list is growing.
And then I'll just mention, we very formal, we made it very clear with city council that, and I sort of like, we need to evaluate this pilot program. We need to understand how it worked, what could work better. That includes everything from, I know one of the things that council had some conversations about, and if you do the math, you'll sort of understand this. The value of the subsidy basically extinguishes at $1 million. That does not mean that like you couldn't purchase a home that is more than $1 million. You just extinguished the city subsidy. There's a lot of product in this community that is north of $1 million that local members of the workforce would be interested in purchasing. So that would be a conversation to have later. Like, should we essentially up the maximum sales price and the subsidy amount? But like, we wanted to have this pilot phase first and understand again, what's the absorption look like of the city subsidy and the onboarding of new units into deed restrictions at that level.
All right, any other questions?
I have a just general question, in the packet, it's still a draft, right? Because there's all the highlighted sections with YVHA questions that we still need to answer, so I'm a little hesitant to approve the draft until we see the final version. I'm 100% on board with this, like, I think we should do this, I have zero complaints about that, but it hasn't been looked over by our attorney, and it's a draft in our packet, and then it's an action item to approve. So I'm wondering if we can, like, I just don't know what the group's thought is on approving something that isn't formalized and hasn't been reviewed by our attorney. I don't think that's best practice. So while I am 100% on board with this program and doing it, I don't know if I would vote yes today while we have a draft in front of us and hadn't been reviewed by our attorney.
So, and I would agree. Brad, and Alyssa, what is your timing as far as rolling out the program? Do we have another month to come back and approve it?
As long as, I'm generally comfortable with it, as long as we sort of have head nods that we're headed in the right direction. This partnership makes sense. You're not seeing any major red flags in terms of, let's call it the sort of agreement as written, the sort of administrative underpinnings, such that we can get to a final version of that and essentially kick off really beginning to work on that administrative procedures document. The main thing, I want to hit the summer buying season. I want this to be out there mid-May, early June.
Right now is when most inventory is coming on.
Yeah, so that's my main thing.
I'm like a full thumbs up on moving forward with this. If you just need a thumbs up, I just don't think it's best practice for us to vote on something that our attorney hasn't reviewed. So I would love to direct staff to keep going down this path, the city to do this, and maybe it's just a 5-minute review item on our next board meeting to be like, yep, we're approving this. But yeah, so that's where I'm at.
So should we do like a thumbs up thing?
Well, I think first, are there any of the yellow highlights that we need to answer today? Because there's some that have these YVHA questions. Is that something staff's working?
I've already sent those comments last week, and that's where currently we're in the merge. I just want to make sure that you've had a general structure of what this document looks like. So I would anticipate that other one comes soon.
I'd love to have one more thing to nudge legal about over and over and over again.
I do agree, like with Michael and saying, is that we do need to, this is time sensitive in that we want to hit the buying season and get deep opportunity. So I guess it is something that for our May meeting is the 14th? Is that a workable time frame to get this rolling in time to have the buyers?
I'm in favor of the document pretty much the way it is. It's just it's a draft. So I'd like to see the final form. I'd be perfectly willing to, for instance, if you sent it out and in red line so we know what the changes are. Next week, I'd work on it via email, if that's allowed. If the time is of the essence.
I guess my question is May 14th soon enough?
There are definitely some things that we would need a strong thumbs up today to carry on, because some of those things between now and May are going to start incurring those costs that are outlined in there. So I think that's where that balance line is.
Suggestion is the progress work in progress with available CFOs. But there is no problem with us working on it. That would be the question to ask the board. Can we work on it? Can we incur costs? With the understanding that we will get paid when the contract. That's all.
We're both sort of agreeing to work at risk.
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we have a thumbs up or down on that, then, we can set up numbers, we can track costs, and we can actually get on with it.
When is George going to have recommended agreement?
Sounds like we owe you a
As
version.
soon as it comes back from the city, we'll send it to George.
Okay, how much time are we looking at?
Well, now, I would love to have this, next week and the week after is just.
Well, what I'm saying is if George approves it next week, can we do what Mark is suggesting? George approves it, that he has approved it, and can it be voted on via email next week? We have it all together.
We
need to have a board.
You have to have an actual
You can.
agendized meeting.
Yeah, you can.
So we have to wait to May 14th.
Or you could schedule a special meeting.
Right.
That would last 25 minutes or less.
Zoom meeting even.
Yeah.
Alyssa, my question is, given the fact that you and Araceli are very involved in getting these cottonwoods closed, do you have the capacity to start a new program right now and still focus on cottonwoods?
Yes, because we're currently doing it we've got 5 other deed restricted homes that we're currently daily working through. The biggest step will be once documents are reviewed by these two legal sides, I would send that off to the fair housing attorneys, and that's gonna take them a bit of time to review those. So the sooner we get those documents, I can start the process before it's probably a month before I'm sitting in on a daily time block of working on this.
So do you need our board approval of the document before you send it to the fair housing, or just once George gives you his recommendations?
That's gonna be the biggest chunk of change, so. Would assume.
So would the board be amenable to tabling this till May 14th? Unless the document is ready sooner, at which point we would schedule a special meeting. Is that?
Sounds okay.
Well, not just table,
Is
but-
there anyone who table it till May 14th?
With the directions to continue working on
With the
it.
direction to continue working on it.
I mean, that was.
Yeah.
But if we could have like a thumbs up on that, then it becomes something separate.
Does that work for you, Brad?
It does, yep.
And Mala?
All right, does anybody have an objection?
Is that a formal motion or are we just doing a straw poll?
Well, just a motion to table.
Motion to table
So we need a second.
Is that a?
until May 14th or earlier if the document
Yeah, I
is
got that.
ready.
I just didn't know if it was a formal motion and.
Okay.
I can make the motion.
Okay.
Till May 14th, directing staff to continue working on it.
Do I have a second?
You said it's not.
Second, I have a motion by Angelica and a second by Mark. Any further discussion on the motion? If not, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right. So it's tabled until May 14th or earlier if the program is ready.
So you're saying explicitly that if that program is ready by April 25th, schedule a special board meeting to vote on.
Yes.
And thank you very much, guys.
Oh,
I'm excited.
we appreciate the partnership.
Yes, this is really exciting.
Right, the next item is the designation of the Slate Creek Neighborhood Board representative and a discussion of delegated authority.
Kathy,
Yes,
can I make a friendly suggestion regarding this?
yes.
Just regarding best practice, is something that I'm involved in various other boards and organizations, chair and otherwise. and it's sort of been a best practice in other groups that I've been involved with, that if the chair is involved in a discussion affecting that chair, and I say in this case, we're selecting board members, and both Kathy and Lou are two very good opportunities, to be on that committee. But I would suggest that we kick the chairing of this section over to our next in line officer, which is Cole, or treasurer. Just because I think someone who's chairing the meeting, if they're asking people to vote for them on something, it can be an inadvertent. It's just best practice not to be chairing a portion of a meeting where people are potentially selecting you for a position. So I would suggest maybe that Cole chair.
I don't have a problem with that, but Kathy, all we're gonna do is pass out ballots.
But I think it needs to be a public vote. I don't think we can do ballots. I think it needs to be a public vote. Doesn't it?
Either way, you have to vote on that.
Right.
Yeah. So I
And
just,
then the second part is the designated of boundaries.
yeah, and that kick it back to you, but I think selecting other people should be not the person's chairing it. It's best practice that I've used in other organizations I'm part of, and whether I'm chairing that meeting or whether I'm a participant, it just is more transparent and inclusive to everyone. And Cole is fine.
That's a group opinion.
Yeah, opinion, what do you guys think? What do you guys think?
How does everyone feel about? I think it's fine to have a full chair. I think that makes sense. And I think the vote should be public for transparency. Just, I don't know how we've done votes in the past on YVHA, because I've only done the vote for the chair and the vice chair, which was public. But it just seems like in the spirit of transparency, which I know we all are about, potentially a public to speak. That's.
I would agree with you that we should have public, I'm with Cole, but I also would like to test one more time as the interest level of people who want to be on this particular steering. Even though we did do that a month ago or 3 weeks ago, whatever it was, I'd just like to revisit it, make sure that anyone has changed their mind, or maybe somebody else might be in this. I just want to ask the question. After you come up with, Cole, the names of the people who are interested, I think, and just want to make sure that we don't have any revisions to that list. Is that all right?
My turn?
Dissolve the Senate.
Well, yeah, I think, yeah, I'd like to dissolve the Senate, become the collective member.
We did that.
No, so, I think, I mean, as a board member, I was, the delegated authority, I think, should be the discussion point before we talk about candidates, and those candidates need to understand the delegated authority. And that could lead to what Councilman Mateen's talking about of throw my hat in or out based upon what my roles and responsibilities are. So I think we should start there.
Yeah.
Of what we are, before we appoint the people, what are we appointing them to do?
Which is why we didn't vote last time.
Right, that's what we need you to chair this, Cole, good work.
So I'll start just with clarification, because the summary coming out of the last meeting, it seems like there's some items that have been finalized, including membership seating of who will be there. Is it still, is that group still awaiting the housing authority appointments? Because the document says the group is set.
Yeah.
I reached out to Kale about that because it also said in the notes that each entity will select their representatives. And I let her know YVHA hasn't selected our representatives. I haven't heard back yet, but I wanted to clarify that we did have a discussion, and Steve, or you weren't there, but Dave, feel free to chime in, Jason was there as well. We did have a discussion that at any point, the city, the county, or YVHA could change who's on that committee. The membership is based off of seats, not on individuals. So it's not like Angelica Salinas has a seat or Dave Barnes has a seat. It's that a county commissioner has a seat and a city councilor has a seat. And then that entity is responsible for appointing who is in that seat. And so I didn't think the notes accurately reflected that, but Jason and Dave that was my understanding of the plan.
You know,
They have elections and changes of officials and stuff, so.
Right, like, exactly.
yeah, I mean, that conversation is a pretty specific conversation. So,
That did, yeah, I just didn't come up to the notes, so.
It was set for that day.
Yeah, except for that day, yeah, I agree that it did not come through the notes, but yes.
So what are the deliverables that this group will be doing? The next meeting, what would our appointees be jumping into and expected to deliver immediately? Given that review, I see a couple things of finalize an end statement, meaning, you know, what's the success look like, and agree upon that. Decision-making timeline, guardrails of that decision-making, the official group name, which is always fun for me. And then, and a strategy around engagement and communication seem to be a little bit further deliverable, so. Am I missing something from that deliverable of the next meeting?
No, I think you covered it well. I actually think that those deliverables were well outlined in the summary. One thing I will note is that this is not a negotiation, and that was very clear that this group defined. I think that there are a lot of members of the public, we heard in public comment, that it was a negotiation. It is not a negotiation. And so this group does not have negotiating powers, or whoever we appoint should not be negotiating, because that's not the goal of this group. So, whereas before it was a negotiation, right? It wasn't a negotiation committee. This is not a negotiation.
And then we're getting to 100% consensus on every decision we make.
Yes, I think that's the other key is, no decision will move forward unless there's full consensus from every single person on the committee, which is a 3-year above. Is to 5.
And if there is not a consensus,
Then we keep voting until there is.
Listen.
The committee can't decide, then it gets brought to the committee.
There
That was
was
talked about
this-
at the first bit of fighting.
Yeah, there was discussion about if the group couldn't come to some consensus, there's clearly either A, more information, or B, public input that's needed to help inform the collective correct direction.
And I think the other thing, just as a, you know, is the fact that the next 2 meetings are what, a day apart?
Yeah.
And there's commitment of 2 3-hour blocks of time on 2 consecutive days, so. If you don't have that availability, I don't think your name should be in it.
So I have a question, just looking at this. First, thanks, you know, to everyone who's been participating, you know, Dave and Lou and Kathy and Helen and Jason. But I'm a little confused. I mean, this is a recommending committee. I mean, whatever this committee recommends, city council, housing authority board, community has to all agree on. And I like that it's not a negotiation, it's a partnership. But some of the items reading the notes, it seems like they're jumping ahead to the final solution before looking at all the details. And for example, a couple of I saw a comment in there that said, you know, we should, you know, annex 1/4 to half of the land. And another comment was maybe it needs to be market rates. And to me, all those type of discussions are predicated upon the big question, and that is, what is the capacity the city has? How many housing units can the city absorb into their current service structure? And until we have that number, all those other items are just darts on the wall. It's like we're doing a mathematical formula and we're getting the answer before we have A plus B, you know, the metrics. So I guess I was a little confused just reading that. I mean, and also Steve, you had mentioned, I thought, that the city was going to have that capacity number.
That capacity constraint analysis is currently being finalized, and we should have it in the next couple of weeks.
But what I remember that, which is fantastic, and thank you, city, for doing that. That's a lot of work. But it wasn't mentioned anywhere in the notes, and I was like,
I think you're jumping ahead as well. I think
Okay.
we're way behind that mark. These are just this is just scenario planning and how we come to terms on agreeing on things. There was nothing specific on numbers or sizes.
Okay.
These were just ideas thrown out where everybody's just kind of musing and putting things up on the board, but seeing how we worked as a group to come to these conclusions. Now that these are the conclusions that we're going to move forward with. Just how are we getting the process to the
Okay, this is just.
I guess, Cole,
Right.
to your question of like, what will these people be jumping into? And what are their boundaries? I think you nailed it, what they'll be jumping into. They're gonna be jumping into, what does success look like? They're gonna be jumping into, what are key milestones that we wanna hit? They're gonna be jumping into, how do we wanna engage the community? And so then when I think about guardrails for YVHA board members, right, like one of the things on the board retreat was, what do they not have the authority to do? You don't have the authority to spend money. Like you don't have the authority to like approve budget expenditures in this Slate Creek thing. You don't, I guess like maybe that is what we should talk about too, is like, what are those guardrails? Like you don't have the authority to make XYZ promises. You don't have the authority to, I think that would also be helpful.
And I would say like, just when we're throwing things out there, like that person needs to take on the responsibility that you are speaking on behalf of this group as a whole, not you as your own person representing your own views. You can certainly use your own expertise to deliver said collective input, but that feels like a pretty baseline piece of the delegation of authority.
Yeah, I would agree with that, that if the board is like, we need this, you personally feel like we need this, it's not you represent the board feels.
I think the scenarios has worked really well in the past. We did the scenarios on growth. It was, here's your options. It's not one place, it's not one position, it's not one. And so you can choose from a variety of one of those. What happens is the community may have one of the scenarios it likes. Housing may have another one, city council may have another one. And so you have to look at all of these, and sometimes you have to meld them together and develop consensus. That's like my approach.
In theory, there's supposed to be, there was no reference to advisory committees in the document that came. And that was a major topic of discussion, I think the previous time. And that there would be separate advisory committees set up for, whether they be part of the DSD, whether they were some other community input, technical input, that would paint a picture of what the Slate Creek neighborhood would look like. And that didn't come across in the notes at all. And actually, somebody mentioned a quarter to a half of the property. I don't even remember talking about that. But I do know that that's not something anyone would have in, because I think that's a big deal. They asked, what do you want to see out of this? What would you think victory is here? I would say if we had 200 to 500 units under construction over the next 4 years, we could declare victory, because that's how long this is going to take.
I think also that a real important piece of this is that I think this needs to be a standard agenda item on every board meeting when this is going on. So the representatives from the committee, like we just told us it was huge. So we need to have that information so we can be sharing feedback. And if there's ever a case that there's a meeting, if our board meeting doesn't align up, that's where I think we need to have, send information out to the board so we can reply back. And do it in accordance with sunshine laws, no reply all, just send it through Sarah, who does a good job, but I think that's a real important piece too.
Well, there was a conversation about communicating with all the entities. And what she had said was she would get the notes from our meeting, which we had on a Tuesday or Wednesday, I can't remember which, by Friday. And I just saw the notes when they were sent out the other day. So I'm not sure, and Brad, you may have a better answer.
That's on me.
Okay, Brad takes responsibility. Okay.
Thanks for sticking around, Brad.
But not only that, I think I'd like to actually add to that. I mean, the review or the summary of the meeting was all on a fine lot of detail, and obviously stuff was not properly put in there. But I also, either in conjunction with that or separately, I would like the representatives to give their executive summary of the last meeting.
I-
Of what was discussed, what they, and they can write it together, that's fine. What they decided upon, what items are gonna need to be discussed at the next board meeting, or something like that. So I think that is an expectation for these two people going into this going forward.
I wonder if we, sorry,
No, well, I just wanted to, and maybe Brad or one of you guys can provide me some illumination on this, but when you have 2 3-hour meetings one day apart, how do we connect from the first meeting, the results of that meeting, and any decisions that need to be made for the second meeting, or is the assumption that somehow that will not be necessary, having 2 meetings back to back?
The idea is that these are 6-hour meetings, but we're not gonna ask anyone to sit in 6-hour meetings. So essentially, it's up to the project team, and the project team is then figuring out what did we get through? We have a 6-hour plan. Did we get 3 hours worth of work done in the first session? And do we need to change? We will write an agenda for an entire 6-hour meeting.
But there will be no input from anybody else on this board or city council or commissioners or anybody else between those 2 meetings.
I think the input needs to be like before the 2 meetings, pretend a meeting is 1 meeting. So like, we're gonna have the agenda for both Thursday and Friday early. And then, so we're gonna know if we're doing all 6 of those hours. So then you'll give feedback for both days, yeah.
And the assumption is that.
So I'll get for the 2 people I'm looking at. I have a community report on the council agenda on April 21st. To Alika's point, I'll be sharing with you the agenda for the full 6 hours over 2 sessions. So the notion is the other 5 are giving their input, in this case to Dave.
And it won't be a right term, 3 hours.
You can all come in.
We asked that not happen. That was something that Counselor Gary asked, was like, that the agenda not change after it's been posted and presented, because all those groups are then taking it to their boards for feedback, and if it changes suddenly, then they don't have the opportunity to do that, and that's something that the project team committed to.
I did last time.
Yeah, and I like Cole and Catherine's idea of like committing to that, and I wonder if it's like, we have the update of staff reports, board reports, like Slate Creek steering committee reports.
Yeah.
Like, I think it just becomes a standing agenda item to facilitate that.
Does the board agree with that?
Yes.
And then also, the other question is pre-meeting comments. So like, when do you think, so the next meeting is, come the next, 1 meeting broken down in 2 days. So when will that agenda be out so we can get it to the board? I mean, does that also, do we need to send comments in advance? I mean, when will that agenda be posted?
That was for next.
Not before our next meeting.
Yeah, so is that something that needs to be sent to the board that then we email comments on, or what's the recommendation from the
Yeah,
people?
I think this is an awkward month because we haven't appointed people yet, but I think moving forward, we'll have the appointees and it will be easier to designate, like, here's what's coming up, here's what's kind of happening, yeah.
I mean, in general.
Yeah.
The document that was sent out set the goals for the next couple of meetings.
Right.
And so, those are the topics. I don't think the topics are gonna change.
Yeah, that's what I clarified, or the deliverables of the next meeting, subject to the agenda being set. Sounds like finalizing an end statement, what's the end vision, decision-making timeline, guardrails, the naming, and then the engagement and communication strategy seems a little vague for just 1 meeting.
Yeah, well, I saw that, it didn't seem like a 6-hour meeting, but maybe I missed something.
Don't underestimate these people.
Yeah, that's why I just wondered what I mean, I saw what the goals were there, but that's not the agenda. Because I saw that and I just thought, well, I was thinking that perhaps might be more for 6 hours.
Well, if you look at the engagement portion of that, I think that's gonna be a significant discussion.
What portion of that?
The engagement,
Okay, gotcha, okay.
I mean, if there's something that hasn't happened, then that is.
Yeah.
Getting
Alright,
the message
okay.
out and getting feedback in. That did not happen on the DST, not to the level that I would have thought would have been desired.
Great.
Any other feedback on what the expectations of these 2 people are?
I think just from a practical standpoint, like there was a lot of talk about the end game of this is an actual plan that is supported by the community, that furthers affordable housing, that's and so the group will be collectively responsible for planning this neighborhood in some way, talking about uses, talking about densities, talking about the amount of space that it occupies, talking about the volume of units based on information from constraints analysis or economic feasibility or whatever it might be, the information that they're getting. So this group is actually molding something to show to the community. And it might be many of some things. It could be several scenarios. You want 400 units, you can package it 4 different ways. And so that is what this group will, like, once we get done figuring out like who we are and what we call ourselves, we'll be like shaping up what this neighborhood ultimately could look like. And so when you're thinking about the delegated authority to this group, how much room do they have to play with those various concepts? And how much of that needs to come back to the board for discussion, direction?
Yes, and I think we kind of touched on that as we need to receive regular comprehensive updates of what's discussed, have clear view of what's coming up, and then that delegated authority is going to be determined on that ground of whatever's being presented out of this group. I don't think we can sit here and say you are allowed to approve any idea up to 400 units, and that's
Yeah.
But if the group comes out with an end statement and our representatives come back and say, we have come to this end statement, good, all right, what does this board think about that? What's the next set of guardrails we want to see?
Yeah.
And I think we have to do that very purposely and timely.
So you're talking essentially about like an iterative version of delegated authority.
Yeah.
Whereas you say, go participate. Tell us what it is that you guys are thinking you're going to do. And then once we understand that, we'll start to put some guardrails.
I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but the city and counties operating the same way, right? You guys you haven't gotten from your respective elected bodies what you can and can't approve as far as unit size.
It's easier for us though, because we meet every week. Like I'm meeting twice a week. I'm meeting every Monday and Tuesday with my fellow commissioner. So as things come out, it's super easy for me. But yes, I mean, we are going in there being like, this is what we think as a board. So yeah.
And yeah, that might be something we have to talk about how to do that going forward, but maybe outside of the meeting every other week or something like that. But
there could be a live document class that outlines what that delegated authority is, and as that changes over time.
Yeah, I think it has to be iterative in nature because we're not sure what we're going to talk.
Yeah.
And so then that means there has to be some sort of an update in terms of here's what was talked about, and then get feedback as quickly as possible. I assume that would have to take place electronically. And look for us, since we don't meet every week.
And right now, correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like we're doing just more sort of how to interact, group sessions. We're not getting that decision making. And sooner or later, community builders are going to be out of the picture. And I think that a little more of the real decision making is going to be coming.
I'm curious if that's how it works out.
Yeah, I mean, I think right now it is big picture, but come this summer, there might be real agendas where it's like we get the needs assessment from the city, and then we're like, okay, let's think about what a real, and then that's when we start giving that more delegating the authority. So I think we're on the right track. I think right now for the next meeting, my suggestion, or what I would like to hear from the group actually, is what authority do these people have for the next meeting? Do they have these, like, I guess if we are talking about what success looks like,
what does this group want success to look like, and then go from there. Without harping too long on it, like I think you can take 2 to 3 minutes to be like, this is what success looks like, you know?
Well, there was a question in the last meeting of the group about fill in the blank. You know, there's a top the top, what do you think Brown Ranch? And each of the people looked at each of those points, and people had ideas like home, safety or security, or some folks went on for a couple of sentences trying to describe that one building. That's kind of what the group expressed in their last meeting.
Yeah, you are correct. I mean, I think we're spot on with it has to be authority based on what the agenda is and, you know, what we're looking at. We can't say now what they'll have for the whole year. It doesn't make sense, but, yeah, I guess my question for the group is what other questions do people have about what these 2 individuals will be doing on behalf of YVHA? Or is it understood? Do we understand?
I understand the next meeting.
It sounds like the delegated authority for the next meeting is listen and report back.
Yes, yeah.
Listen, right. Participate.
Yes, participate, yeah.
Don't stop your hands.
And I think there's a high level of this engagement. Of course, we want to have broad community engagement. We want to be inclusive. I mean, I think that's the core value of this entire group. So I don't think we need that.
I will bring up one thing because 2 different board members brought it up last meeting, and we as the property owner have a little bit of a different stake. But Scott, who's not here or is not here, brought it up and convinced me afterward. But what is the temperature of this board directing our representatives to push the idea, and push is a relative term, not be pushy, but push the idea of obtaining a developer expertise in these conversations sooner rather than later. So that if there is a timeline to it or whatever, and as we do start moving beyond just governance, that a developer is at the table telling them go, no go on their ideas. Because it doesn't look like that's currently considered. Mark, I know you were a proponent of that.
I think it's critical.
Yeah, I agree that.
And I think also the list of other professionals that are going to be involved, because you need a professional group to help us.
Yeah.
Well, I think the vision of the technical subcommittees and that's where I think the technical expertise lies, and that they inform the larger group. But I agree, we need, the technical expertise.
I think you need a developer at that larger group to get the input from that technical expertise to then help shape the discussion of what Jason just described as the owners of the vision. And it's critical, and it's a shame Scott's not here.
Well,
I think it's critical to make sure that, the ambitions and the dreams of everybody that's involved, are tied to reality, and make sure that we're not, getting ahead of ourselves.
I'd like to add on that too, because I thought, and Scott said it much more eloquently than I will, but I also think it needs to be a developer who's experienced in developing affordable housing. Because I think that that's a very different talent. I mean, their developers are all very talented, but I think it's a different set of skill sets of someone who just knows how to do affordable. It's different. I mean, even the discussion, or even the discussion of affordability. One of the main reasons we passed a short-term rental tax at 9% was Brown Ranch infrastructure. So I'm almost wondering, I almost thought Scott was suggesting that once we get the capacity, because I think whether it's 100 units, 200 or 400 makes a difference. Maybe that's the time that we suggest this group to do an RFP to bring in a developer to help us define the scenarios. But Jason, what do you think? Because you've done this before. If we actually had someone in there at the onset with us, or?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely critical to have somebody who actually knows how to implement at the table.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm sorry, Councilman Martinez.
No, I just wanted to say a couple of things. One is, we were yesterday in Fraser at this affordable housing project, the St. Louis project. I don't know if you've
Yes.
with that project, but one of the key learnings from that, and that's going to be couple hundred units when it's all out there. And was they did get a developer in at the early stage of that discussion. And I think Scott will tell you that an RFP or RFQ, whatever, is a process that could take, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months to find a developer. On the other hand, the shorter term process for that might be to bring in a developer now as a consultant who has affordable housing background and who might be interested in being on this team. Whether they're interested in getting the project or not is another thing, but they could be considered, but it's not a given that they would get the project. But I think we have some potential to bring in somebody who has expertise in this area early on, while at the same token, we can be thinking about the longer term RFP.
I love that.
And this developer also they had a finance department that were integral in the capital stack as well.
And that's a key part.
From the get-go, so they hit the ground running, and they worked at a consultant fee and then converted into an incentive-based development.
I really like that, because one thing just mentioning the capital stack, it's interesting, because it's during the Brown Ranch discussion, there's, the discussion of how we used to do affordable housing in the late 1990s, early 2000s, where it'd be sort of on the back of the free market. Free market, we just sell free market and then do a little bit of affordable housing. And great things were accomplished, but yet even the communities that succeeded, you saw people working in Aspen driving in from Rifle, and Aspen's done great work. But, now we have the SDR funds, the state passed the Prop 123. I mean, there's a lot of new subsidies that we need to have someone who's experienced in knowing how to do that stack with our SDR funds, with our Prop 123, with anything else out there to get it affordable. So I love that idea.
I think with
Mark's up next.
Yeah.
My reference to developer has nothing to do with the building. But this is strictly somebody that has been there and done this before to provide advice. Under no circumstances would I want to build it. And if he wants to build it, then this would go out to bid, and he can bid on that, right? But he's there for advice.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. It's not.
Or she.
Yeah, or she.
Or them.
But we don't necessarily have to discount them out of the process. It's just that they are not selected or have any advantage in the developer.
Yeah.
It's just to get their feedback because they have expertise, and it would be nice if they had local expertise in Steamboat Run.
Yeah, I think it would be more. I think that's something we're going to talk about. It creates an internal competition. Done this before with contractors. Same way. They're looking for insight into what's going to be built from whatever motivations. And we're looking for expertise, which may or may not be one single.
Okay, so I guess what I brought that item up just to see how the board, John.
We talk about guardrails and make sure we don't get off going. I think the developer be a good consultant to give us some ideas how far we're going off our guardrails, even if it's the capacity as well as the abilities.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that we were kind of getting into discussion that I hope the team will have. And I was just making sure that the board was of the understanding that we would empower our representatives to push that discussion. And it already sounds like it's happening, so I'm actually fine now. But it's just an understanding that these two representatives, they have the expectation they will have. If that discussion is not occurring, to at least bring it up and ensure that opinion is heard, because it's a very strong opinion held around this room as a game. Okay, so far, what we are asking these representatives to do are go represent YVHA on behalf of YVHA to a certain extent, listen, report back, participate in the upcoming agenda with those deliverables that we discussed, return an executive summary by them to this board of the meeting that occurred, with or without the notes from the meeting, how do they come to us? But be a little timely in that. Maybe I know it's back-to-back days of meetings, but 72 hours, up to 72 hours afterward, returning that summary to the board. And And then future agendas, making sure that we as a board understand what is discussed and what the topics are, deliverables, and solicit feedback from this board on future meetings that we would then delegate iterative authority to discuss and transact. Is that a pretty clear definition of what these representatives will be doing? And responsibilities.
Well said.
Good summary.
All right.
So, did you get all that?
Let's record. Okay, who still has their hat in the ring, who wants to take it out, who wants to throw it in? I believe Kathy, you still are wanting to participate.
Didn't have
Lou.
time to do that.
Lou,
Yeah,
And then-
that sounds good.
yeah, John.
Scott.
Scott,
No, Scott.
Scott, no, he's not here to say.
John.
Are there anybody else?
Scott's not here, City.
Yes, it's volunteer. Scott's not here, he's not
That's you get from.
voluntold. Anybody else would like to, given that structure and that.
Who's the
those
list?
guidelines?
Who is the list?
John,
Kathy, Lou, John, and Jen.
Same as before.
No.
Yes. So do we nominate people or is this just an open vote?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't give this much thought, obviously.
Well, I can,
The opposite thing's different with
Yeah.
how we vote in public for officers, and those are Robert's rules where there's a nomination.
Yeah.
And to kind of go around that with a predetermined list because no one's really raised their hand, but. This is different. This is an appointment to an external committee, so I don't think we have to be as formal as a nominating. So I guess I'll just pick the temperature of the room of how you want to go about this. It looks like Louis brought ballots to write down.
Yeah, I brought the ballot, but we're gonna have a public.
I think for some time, I think you have to. Vote. I don't think.
It's not like we would keep the vote secret. It's just that we're
Yeah.
collecting.
I would like to say that I feel strongly that there should be a new fresh perspective on this committee, someone who was not involved with Brown Ranch and the iteration of the past 2 to 3 years of what's gone on. I think that there is absolutely value in historical contracts and experience, but experience can come in a variety of ways. And I think that in the spirit of moving forward and that I personally feel strongly that we need someone who is completely not involved with the Cottonwoods, with Brown Ranch, with that vote, with the BRAC and things like that. And so that would be my statement. I think that we absolutely can have a balance, but I would recommend that we appoint Shannon. I think that she served on the DST. I think that she has that younger perspective. She's lived in one of our units. I think she's the only one on this board who has lived in Yampa Valley affordable housing in the last decade. Something that is ours. I think that perspective, she with the health partnership and worked with people who are going to be living in our housing and want to live in a Slate Creek neighborhood. And so when we think about what the community is asking for, they are asking for that new representation. They are asking for someone who's not involved in the last process, for that fresh perspective. And so that would be my spiel as we vote.
Is there anybody else has an opinion on the makeup of these two appointees?
Well, I think to the point of having a fresh voice, a new perspective, I think that is important. In addition to not being a perspective that is tied to some other efforts that you mentioned in the past. I think that Shannon is the person who has that different perspective here. So I would also support that direction of having at least one member, I guess one member, has a totally fresh perspective and all the other reasons you articulated, I would support. I would also say as far as the other three candidates, we talk about the importance here of a developer background, et cetera. You have been there, so that has some extra weight for you in terms of having someone with that background.
Yeah, part of the reason that I joined the board was to help bring, new perspective. And for all the reasons that other people said, I also supported the nomination for this committee. And I think that though, to Angelica's point, there does need to be a balance, right? We need to bring in new perspective, fresh ideas, and, that really just that perspective of people who have been who would be served by this project, right? But I think that we also need to bring in the experience of people who, know what it's like to develop affordable housing, who are, involved in previous projects and can speak confidently of the sentiment of the board in general. And I think that in my mind, I think that Lou is also the best person to do that. So my vote, my suggestion would be for Shannon and Lou together.
Are we doing two?
Well, so actually, that's a good point. Just came to my mind. These meetings are public, right? And to your clarification of the seats of the representing bodies have been finalized. Is the board open to two appointees and an alternate? In the event that
Yeah, I don't think.
Doing a staff member, so there should always be at least a staff member as well there. We have not discussed any alternates at all. Yeah,
So the city and county do not have alternates. Okay.
not.
No, and we have had zero discussion about that.
I retract my suggestion. What about staff? I know Jason, you've been attending these. Elliot, are you now going to take over doing that?
No, we talked about that internally, and I think the right person for this is Emily. And she has kind of the expertise from the previous go round. Kind of being second to Jason is the staff subject matter expert on it. And so I'm happy to defer that and let it take a read.
Okay, so two appointees now. Any other opinions on the makeup of the two appointees?
I just want to reiterate the comments. I think, I really appreciate what Angelica said regarding new voices. So I think that's critical. And I think it's something that when we give, new opportunity to new voices and new people, great things happen. I mean, just things that I've seen, and I don't want to go down the political route, but with Senator Roberts and Representative Megan Lukens, they are both considered extremely young, and they, Senator Roberts got the insulin bill passed, which no one thought would happen. I really think we also need to start building the next generation of affordable housing activists. I mean, that's Shannon, Dan, Scott. I mean, we need to start doing that. So I really appreciate that. But I also really appreciate what Steve is saying on balance. And Lou brings that technical expertise. He's just the fact of how well you articulated what occurred at the last meeting that wasn't in the packet. I so appreciated that. And you're very talented at bringing that information back. So I love John so much. And my God, I'd love to pick you or Kathy, but I'm just looking at the balance of Shannon and Lou together, and it just seems like the A-team. I mean, it's like, it seems like it's going to be yin and yang. It's going to bring a real powerful voice. So I really like, Angelica and Steve, your suggestions on that. I support it.
Are these board members online?
Yes, Maddie.
Maddie's on.
Who is Maddie someone?
Yep. Yes, you just joined.
Maddie's also the future generation of housing activists.
Okay, well, a proposal to do like ranked choice voting then. We'll just, we'll go down the four people that have offered up. Raise your hand if you want them on the committee or not. We'll take the top two. If there's a time, we'll talk about what to do then.
Everybody going to two.
Did Scott say that couldn't do this?
He could not.
Yeah, he said he couldn't commit the time.
Well, the thing he's on the board directing the people that are on.
Well, and also don't forget, just because someone's not in this committee doesn't mean we don't have a voice. I mean, that's actually the benefit of not being on it, is looking at it holistically and sharing ideas. I mean, You know, and that's why I also think Shannon and Lou will be very inclusive of making sure everyone's voice is heard.
Okay, there's 11 of us with Maddie. I understand if Maddie wants to, not vote because she just joined, but obviously welcome to. So there's 11 of us. We'll take the top 2 vote getters. Is that agreed?
So everybody vote for it.
Everybody vote for 2 people, yeah, and well, if there's a tie, we'll make something of us. 3-man leg race, we held on consecutive Sundays. Name that.
How many board members?
We have 11.
How can that be? I don't see that.
We're missing two.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Also, we're missing, I've got Michael and she left.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's
She's not on.
right.
All right, so, raise your hands until I get them counted, if you would like Kathy to be appointed. Do I see Maddie there? See you. For Luke. 1, 2, 3, 4.
How many is it?
7.
And is that
Voting,
including
no, 2.
Maddie is a,
Yes.
Maddie has her hand up there, so it's,
Maddie has her hand up there to me.
that's 8.
Shannon. And John.
John, you're such a gentleman.
All right, I recorded 10 votes for Shannon, 8 for Lou, 1 for Kathy, 0 for John. I would entertain a motion to appoint Shannon and Lou as our representatives on the, whatever they come up with team.
Second.
So I'm sorry, what was the?
Kathy Meyer with the first,
Okay.
Sorry.
John Feasy with the second. That's very poetic. Any further discussion on the appointments? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
So this is appointment to get to be named.
Yeah, to the TBD.
Right.
Our slate creates neighborhood.
Thank you all for those that considered the discussion.
Good.
Yeah, thank you, everybody who put their name in. Thank you to those that have been working on this for the last 9 hours. A meeting time, myself, including Kathy, who's not gonna be appointed but did work.
Thank you.
And I reluctantly give my power back.
All right.
You did such a great job.
You did good. You did
Like the power?
You're right.
I laid the power down, just like Maximus Fididius.
All right, yes, our next item is the transition plan and executive director search committee appointments. We are scheduled for 60 minutes for this topic and we're right at 2 o'clock. And as Michael Ann had to leave, she has expressed an interest, just so you know, in being on the search committee. So, who would like to, well, first of all, I'm gonna mention that the transition plan that the staff was working on is I think a really good starting point in terms of that the staff is in good hands and we are not going to fall off a cliff because we've got a strong interim director and a strong leadership team. A strong team, that's what I meant, leadership. Shall we start with thoughts about a transition plan and then talk about the appointments committee?
Let me set the stage on that. The transition plan that was distributed really consists of 4 components. The first is the regular communication. This is internal staff, the board, and to fund it. And it's an important component of the transition plan itself. Second is operational continuity. And that's something that Elliot has actually been working on, sent out a spreadsheet, been working with Jason. The third is the knowledge transfer, which is one of the most important aspects. We're gonna have a gap, Jason leaving, someone else coming in. And so knowledge transfer is gonna be a little more complicated than just talking to someone. It's gotta go through Elliot. And the fourth is the search committee itself. And then the search committee, so. The decisions we need are we've done one, Elliot is the interim director. Another is to create a transition team. And that should be led, that should be consistent. Elliot, comms director, and select board. And then question if possibly staff. I think that's something that we should have in today. And, you know, then this is the transition team itself. This is not the search committee. They can be the same, although I've heard mixed messages as to whether that's a good idea. And that's something we should talk about. Search committee should be about 5 to 8 members, be it the board of directors, staff, and possibly an outsider. And I've heard conflicting discussion about whether or not we could have an outsider. I was thinking Tim Walcott, but you know, do we want an outsider involved in the search? You know, someone from the outside. So those to me are the questions. You know, can we appoint the 5 to 8 members of the search team? Can we finalize a discussion about whether or not we have a transition team and a search team or separate teams? And if so, who's on the transition team?
I've got a question, and for some reason I'm having internet problems, so I'm not pulling up your document. I did read it, thank you. Regarding the transition first, to me, the transition part is an operational decision. And I just don't know how much board input we need to have on that. I mean, I think we had.
Somebody has to be.
Well, but I'm just saying, we had the governance, discussion with our strategic planning, consultant. And I think one of the key messages they had is to have our guardrails out from where the board and the staff moves in. And a lot of the transition as far as the tactics seem tactical and operation side. So I'm just wondering, I mean, and this is an Elliot Jason question too. We're now talking about just a daily workflow. I mean, the board needs to direct high-level policy guidelines that we want our staff to do, but that's a board decision. I'm just a little worried that I don't want us to be micromanaging the work that our new acting ED is doing. So I just want to make real sure that we're staying within our foul lines based on
the transitions are relatively complex. Communication's key. I put a board member on the transition team mainly for communication purposes. To understand, because honestly, part of the transition is actual search and hiring of someone.
Well, now I'm not talking, the search team is different. The search team is definitely.
Actually, the first question is, are they different? Should we have one and the same? Transition team is the search team. It's one of the questions.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we don't get, we just appointed Elliot as our acting executive director.
And
I want
Elliot is
him
in
to
charge
go
of the
forth
transition team.
Yeah.
Elliot's in charge of the transition.
And I don't want to micromanage him. So I just want to make sure that we're giving him the authority, let's respect his authority and staff to get this done. And how much input from the board does staff need on this? That's my question to Jason and Elliot. As far as the actual, I'm not talking about the search. We have to find a new ED. I'm talking about we're losing talent with Jason leaving. And we need to cover that talent, and we still need to get things done while we're doing that. So what does staff recommend on how we handle the day-to-day operations while we're transitioning Jason, or, during Jason's time up until June and thereafter? And how much board input and activity is recommended?
Well, I mean, I think just from a solely transition standpoint, I mean, I feel good about where we're at. You know, as I sent out that email and detailed kind of in that spreadsheet, you know, this has input from all of the leadership and everyone's actively bought into that. You know, there's been really great meetings and kind of communication of what we need from Jason. Where, you know, we've got calendar dates where he's sitting down with individual team members. So I feel good about where we are from a transition, from a knowledge-based transfer position. And, you know, I think if that eases some concerns at the board level, you know, I'm happy to continue to provide updates on that weekly through a weekly update that I do to the board or through that spreadsheet. Just so you can see kind of the progress and how things are moving along. And if there's anything that maybe as you know, review that, you see as like a miss or something that we need to add to it. But it has a lot of staff input, and the sense I get is that, you know, we're moving in the right direction. And to Steve's point earlier, I mean, this isn't all sitting with one person either. It's being, you know, he's working with Elizabeth, he's working with Emily, he's working with Sandy and Andy. I mean, the collective team is working on gathering this information, documenting it. And I think in general, this is like a good practice for us also moving forward with, you know, other things like property management, development, so that we have call it a repository of information that we can pull in and utilize as we move forward as an organization. So I think there's a lot of healthy kind of things that are happening through this transition period. But that's my take on it. I don't know what Jason feels, but I mean, I feel good with kind of where we're at, call it a month into this and with 2 more months to go. So.
Yeah, I mean, you've got essentially a talent-based organization that's loaded with talent. And so, you know, my objective over the course of the next couple of months, however many weeks it is to work in service of them to help buoy their knowledge and expertise. There's a lot to begin with on top of it, because the vast majority of people that exist in our organization are experts in their various fields. And so there are certain things, probably more along the lines of development and entitlements, that I tend to have the most experience with. And that's where I'm focusing a lot of my efforts to train up various team members so that they can carry on that knowledge. I think that, you know, with Elliot kind of being that steady leader, the team relying on each other, operationally, I don't think there should be much concern. That transition will essentially be relatively smooth and be able to ramp up with a new executive director, because that will free up Elliot's time and free up everybody else's time. And that was obviously one of the houses. I think the key, however, is that we don't make any dramatic, like, left or right turns as an organization. Like, now is not the time to say, like, you know, we're actually really interested in doing something that nobody's ever talked about. And so, like, from that standpoint, you know, there's initiatives that were underway, like updating the strategic plan, those types of things. Like, to me, the strategic plan is what it currently is, and you march along with that until you bring on a new leader. And I think it's those types of conversations that need to be had. And then the transition, if you will, is largely based on what's the profile of the person you want sitting in the director's seat. What's the vision that you all have for the organization, not in the next 6 months, but in the next 6 years. And how do those two things sort of mesh? So I see the vast majority of work from the board level being at that selection committee level, coming up with a profile of who's the right person, having the discussions amongst the group, the whole board, about, are we making, over the course of the next 6 years, like with somebody new, are we looking to move in a different direction? Are we looking to approach things differently? Do we need a different set of skills from that person to achieve that? Those are I think that's the exploratory process that you would expect the search committee. And trust that Elliot and team have the operations dial, because they do.
Not to open old wounds and harp on it, but asking the board what a successful transition looks like should have been asked months ago. And I would answer that and go to answer your question of, we would have, I think we would have come, or at least my opinion would have been to split out these two concepts of transition and search. External search, internally looking transition, externally looking search. And we would have done what we did today, empower Elliot to be the ED, focus Jason's work on knowledge transfer through the end of his time, and supporting the new ED and anything that he might need. And then appointing staff to list out the transition goals that they have, because they know the operations. But luckily we have talented staff that did that work for us without being asked. So we're kind of caught up in all sense in my mind. And so I am fine with the transition focus being with Elliot and everything he's already done, with periodic updates. Doesn't need to be weekly. My personal flavor is not to know what the staff is doing on a weekly basis, but general terms, what's falling behind, what's ahead of schedule, where what have we uncovered, in the closet that we absolutely have to now pivot to. Anything, just don't surprise us. We don't want to be surprised. So let us know early and often if something is awry, but keep us updated on the strategic stuff. And I empower the president of the board to work with the ED to flesh out anything that's in there that doesn't need to come to the full board. And then this whole search committee thing, which I think we'll get to, is where we should be. So the risks associated with the transition, I think, are more external communications. So I think we give public meeting. I don't see any members of the press letting them know that all things run through Elliot now, and the board president, just so they update their contact information. To my knowledge, Jason has reached out to our partners and informed them of the transition. Whatever finalization needs to occur there, the resolution that we passed today, I think, are the last few risks associated with a successful transition. That's my thought process.
The only comment I'm making is making sure that Lorraine is plugged into this for internal and external. There has to be, in the process of knowledge management, knowledge transfer, it's hard for one person to capture everything that's happening. And so someone with communications background is essential to make sure that we're all aware, including yourself, of things that we're saying and doing.
I think another point we need to look at as part of, not only as part of this transition, but as part of, continuing, or improving the high performance of the organization. I do think we also need to, sooner than later, take a look at the board governance structure that we discussed during our retreat, and make sure that whatever structure we move forward with our new executive director, that we are setting him or her up for success.
Yes.
So I think that was some of the concerns that we heard during our board retreat, was that, best efforts intended, that we might have not been staying within our foul lines with management of our executive director. So I think we need to have that sooner rather than later. I mean, I understand that that consultant group sent a proposal in, but we
But
need,
we're scheduled to talk about that.
and that's next month, right? So I think that ties into the search committee also, because the type of individual we want, we need to make sure that our board structure, our board activity and governance complements and supports that. So I think they're very, very much parallel paths on that.
I would just like to add, we went through pretty in-depth search for the city manager job. We utilized an outside firm, search firm, which I think is required here too. I also think that it's important that city council, and I would assume commissioners, that we are on that search committee. It's an IGA between the city and the county. This is a very important piece of the puzzle, and I think we need to commit the time to be part of that search committee.
I would almost even suggest in this situation that perhaps, and you guys don't love this because I know you're both real busy, but maybe that you guys co-chair it, because we are an organization formed by the city and county. Our new ED is critical. So I really kind of like the idea of city and county together. If you guys have time, taking the co-chair lead on it. Just because I really want to make sure this is a community process and that we're doing it very thoughtfully and collaboratively. But I don't know if that's just a thought for you guys.
I would agree that it's important that the city council representative and the county commissioner have a seat on the transition committee. I think that that's important. I think that throughout this, there's been great conversation happening, and throughout this transition, what's really important, we talked about this a little on our work session the commissioners did over the last 2 weeks, but the stability of the housing authority is really important over the next 6 months. Stability supporting staff, stability at the board level, and the two constant things are the city and the county. Right? That is the stability when it comes to the housing authority board. And so how can we step in and be leaders and provide that leadership stability during this time? I think it's going to be a really important piece. So I think those are the conversations we've had at the county commissioner level. It's just how do we best support the staff and the board during this time when we don't know how long that it will take to do a search. I agree that we need to do a national search or a big search and hire an outside group to run that search and do it very thoughtfully and transparently as we can, community engagement opportunities for finalists, whatever that looks like. But come next November, December, there's going to be people who are not on this board who are, then there's going to be new board members working. So because of that constant shift of board members, I think that just needs to be an underlying thread of how can we continue to provide that leadership stability for the staff and the board throughout this transition time.
Any other thoughts or comments?
I'm curious on having an outsider as part of the search.
What is the selection committee gonna do? Are they gonna, for example, are they gonna find 5 applicants and then we'll go through an interview process and select them? Or is the selection committee actually gonna select?
Well, when we did our search, we hired an executive search firm to lead the process. They ask a lot of questions from a lot of people who are in the know in terms of what are we looking for in terms of competencies, qualifications, background, and what is the vision, as Jason's talking about, for the housing authority, so you can really get a good profile set up. They basically put together an entire marketing campaign around that. And they go out and they get responses, let's say 30 responses, if you will. And you can do this any way you want, but the way we did it was they vetted them down to say that, you know, a lot of these are coming with, shall we say, some weaknesses and a lot of others. Yeah, and so we end up with, you know, six or seven really good candidates. And then we did some interviews on the phone with some of these, all these candidates, and we boiled it down to 3. In addition to our interim, who got the job, and well deserved, by the way. But we brought in these 3 other candidates with Tom, and they met with the community. You know, we had them over at the city hall and the new fire station and whatnot, and they all met with the community, all of them. And then when it came back, even the search firm was involved in that process where we sat down in an executive session and made the qualifications of those 4 candidates.
But this is, you know, one of the decisions to be made. This is going to be a national search, and I think, yes, the answer is personally. But, I mean, that's a decision that has to be made. This is going to be I wouldn't say expensive process, but it's not going to be cheap. The search firm is going to be 30% the first year's salary, most likely, somewhere in that vicinity.
There's other things in there too around, you know, you get paid if you don't get paid if the person doesn't stick around a certain amount of time. There's a number of conditions in those types of.
Okay, so the search team should be managing a great deal of number of aspects. The due diligence going from 30 to 3, you know, yes, it's a search firm, but somebody has to manage the search. And so that has to be part of this.
But I think the expectation is that the final decision is made by the full board.
No question.
Okay.
Not the, so when it's the executive search committee, they're doing the oversight.
They're doing the work.
They're bringing vetted, best qualified candidates to the board for consideration.
But the full board discusses like certain talents, the board wants things like that, the higher level.
Well, from that standpoint, there is a draft executive director profile that was created, partially inclusive of the work of Charney Keys, that has been distributed. Anybody has any comments, that's what the selection team should need to go through and say, this is good, this is bad, we want something else.
Well, I think I read that, Lou, and I did have, there's one glaring omission, I thought. At the very, it didn't have that it supported, that the individual supports our mission. So,
Okay.
a very, like the number one most, but also I guess my question on that is, did staff have a chance to look at that? Because
No, that's one of the other questions. Last time we met as a the general consensus was not to give it to staff until the board had looked at it.
Okay.
So now we've had our meeting. I'm all in favor of giving it to staff. Post haste.
So I guess the question,
What's
given what, I mean, that was something that was sent
The
out.
transition plan itself,
It wasn't asked for comments. I mean, we got that. I didn't realize that was something,
gas for comments?
I mean,
Again, I think we're conflating transition with search,
right.
internally focused versus external. Staff has created the transition plan. I think if you give them that, I don't know what they're gonna do with it, or that they should do anything different than what they're already currently doing. This is my point.
this transition plan just establishes baseline things you should do in a transition.
Yeah, why don't we just use Elliot's transition plan?
Well, would you like to write your transition plan?
He has his transition. plan.
Yeah.
He sent it to us. I thought Elliot's Excel spreadsheet was a transition plan.
That's not a plan, okay, but I won't debate semantics.
I really, to me, like Jason said, we have the talent, like when the city council, when you guys are looking for your new city manager, you didn't like tell Tom how to manage the city in the interim, he just did it.
Well, he was the deputy city manager, so he just moved into that role.
Well, and Elliot's the deputy.
And the difference was, you know, he'd been working for the current city manager, same situation.
Yeah, so why don't we,
So, but if you're trying, I think you are, this transition plan with the whole thing about a search and selection piece, because hiring the right search firm.
right,
is extremely important, and it has to have expertise in hopefully nonprofits and hopefully affordable housing. They will have a well-crafted process to follow. It's not that we can't change it or revise it or input to it, but they will have a well-crafted process that is validated and has been successful many times over. The last thing they want to do is not do a wonderful job for you, because it means everything to them, from referral base and everything else that they get. So they will come with a process at the start, and you will take it and say, okay, I like this, I'd like to tweak that, and everything else. So it'll be start to finish.
right.
So that's different than this internal transition.
Yeah,
I agree.
I agree.
So I, as a board member, would like to then seat this selection committee so that we can issue RFPs for a search firm. To your very specific question, I'm adamant about not including anybody from the community. From the community, I mean, because this search firm will act as that expertise that we would go search for out in the community, and I think it should be 3 board members and you know, 1 or 2, probably 2 members of the executive team of the staff. Elliot and Emily specifically. And I mean, that's public meetings, and then you have to go to exec session to talk about resumes and stuff like that. I don't know that kind of logistics.
Well, are you suggesting, just to understand what you said, so 5 people, 2 staff, 3 board members? Is that what you just suggested, or did I interpret that?
Loosely suggested.
Loosely suggested, okay.
As the search.
As the search committee focused which their first order of business is to identify a search firm and engage a search firm, and then I believe we probably have to do an RFP.
Yes, yes.
It's gonna be
Yes.
an amount of.
Yes.
And hopefully, I don't know, Jason and Chapel would have recommendations that we send the RFP to, if there's, with your network.
Will probably.
Yeah, I mean, just what good search firms for housing. But there's also other things we're gonna have to consider also is just, which I'm sure, I think the search firm will help us with, is what the current salary has to be. I mean, things like that. And also just other considerations I think we need to have on the table, not that I'm recommending it. But, you know, when looking a few years back, and for both city council and county commissioners, both when, you know, prior to Gary Suter being hired and prior to Jay Harrington being hired at the county, the city and county went with hiring an interim director to get them through the sort of the transition they were going through. And we kind of are in a discussion on transition right now, based, I know the finance committee, and I think we even have it on our agenda here, but the finance committee next week is talking long-term funding. You know, we are looking at a transitional period where, you know, our operations are funded by the mill levy, yet the mill levy is, you know, has to be either renewed or we find another source of funding after next year. So this may be a situation where we might want to look interim to get us across that bridge. I don't know. I just think we need to be thoughtful how we.
Well, I think those are the conversations this
The search committee needs to have, yeah.
do with the advisors.
So Paul, you're thinking of, in addition to Steve and Helica, have 3 additional board members?
No,
I think
they have raised their hands to be on it.
Yeah.
That's too.
We've raised our.
Okay, so you think, I think it'd be bigger.
Which I don't necessarily disagree with. I mean, just because you guys both from your elected bodies have gone through this recently, I think the recency bias you might have about that is good for us.
Never mind.
All right, I'm going to do a time check. It's 2:30. We've scheduled it till 3. The next item was the discussion of the long-term funding, which is scheduled for an introduction of 30 minutes. I'm assuming we want to continue with the topic that we're on. And that if we have to, we'll push the long-term funding to the next meeting, and we'll make it a priority. And the other thing is the finance committee meets next week, and we've invited everyone, Sandy did, to go over that 5-year projection. So Catherine, I'm sure you'll be there.
I would make a suggestion that we roll that into what's already currently on the agenda, which is that strategic planning and continuation of our discussions on how this board wants to operate going forward. It's a key piece of information, but it can be a piece of that discussion.
Next week, May.
Yeah, for me, what's currently on May 14th.
Okay,
But yeah, we'll have it ready for
all right.
I promise.
So we will continue with the discussion of whether we need it sounds to me like the transition should be left to staff, and in the event there are specific items, they would bring them to the board. But there's no reason to form a separate transition team.
I would agree with that.
100%.
I agree. I mean, they've already been through this for 3 months last summer, so I mean, they got the how to do it, so I assume they're doing it right now. I'm comfortable with that.
Okay. All right, then let's move to the composition of the executive search committee. And it's been recommended that there's 1 member of the county and 1 member from the city. And Michael Ann has suggested that she serve on that committee. I'm prepared to make a motion that that's the composition, in addition to two staff members, being Elizabeth and Elliot.
Emily.
Emily, I'm sorry.
Is there anyone else who wants to? We don't have to just have 3. We could have 4 if someone else is interested.
Yeah, I mean, we can.
It's already a public meeting.
Yeah, anywhere between 5 and 7 people. 7 people is better. So if there were other people that want to be on this, the search committee, that's good from this group.
And their immediate deliverable to us is identifying through an RFP process, a search firm.
That's their first deliverables, the search thing, search company.
Okay. Anyone want to make a motion for those 3?
I'll make a motion for those 3.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion by Catherine and a second by Lou that the composition of the committee would be our county representative, our city representative, Michael Ann and Elliot and Emily. So any further discussion on the motion? Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? We have a search committee. All right. Since it's 2:35, I will entertain a motion. We're going to defer the long-term funding to our main meeting as part of the strategic plan. So I have a motion by Dan to adjourn. And a second by Catherine. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Hey team, the meeting's still being recorded.
New things.
Yeah.
Joel, they are very.
But it'll be around. They're gonna be great. I'm excited, you know, with that undergrad school. I wish I had more time.
No, I get it.
You know? I know. So thank you. Deal with those. Thank you. I'll see what the. Change up.
Yeah, it's
Good progress. Jason.
Maybe.